guest today is Lei from Lei's Real Talk, a YouTube channel she started during the pandemic with the goal of helping the Western world better understand China, the CCP, and the Chinese people. What would you estimate is the actual size of China's economy, and what do you think is the real growth of its GDP over all these years?
Well, that's a question that a lot of us have been thinking about, right? I think China's its official GDP is at $18 trillion for 2022. I did a program, I think it was in April, that recalculated China's GDP based on a couple of different methods. I think China's GDP is between $5 trillion and $9 trillion. 9 trillion, I think, is half of 18 trillion. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just a rough estimate without going too much into the details. But I think China's GDP is really around the same GDP as Japan, which is 5.2 and 5.3 trillion.
What would you say are some of the sources you drew on to come to that conclusion?
There are a couple of sources I used. One is a study by a professor called, his name is Luis Martinez. He's at University of Chicago. In July 2021, he released a study. He studied the night lighting captured by satellite. I think it's either 184 or 148 countries, but over 100 countries. And he compared the autocratic countries versus the democratic countries. He found that there's a pattern, like when the light nights grew, that the growth corresponds to the GDP growth. So they correspond with each other. However, for the autocratic countries, the GDP growth seems to be overstated by 35%. So he concluded that there's a 35% deflator factor that should be applied to autocratic countries. And if you look at the autocratic countries, China is the one that's most obsessed with GDP. So I think its deflator may be more than 35%.
Interesting. Now, on the same subject, what about GDP growth, that number we get every quarter? What do you estimate the more accurate number would be?
Right. I calculated, so I compared the GDP that China had in 1992 versus 2022. So over the 30 years, the compound annual growth rate, based on its official numbers, is 12.7% annual growth. That's a compound average annual growth. So if I apply Professor Martinez's deflator factors, so it should be around 8.25%. And 8.25% is a tremendous annual growth factor. I mean, if you think about it, an economy that has been growing at over 8% consistently for 30 years, that's amazing. But that would bring China's GDP to $5.3 trillion, not the $18 trillion that it stated now.
So would you say, what about like this year as far as the growth goes?
I think since the pandemic, China's GDP has not been on an uptick trend. It should be on a downtick trend. But of course, the entire world has not been talking about contraction, right? We just heard last week that Citibank, JP Morgan Chase, and Goldman Sachs have lowered China's GDP projection for this year from 5.5% to 5%. So they're still talking about growth, when I think we have not seen any growth.
Right, I think their inflation is at 0% for June. So that sounds like zero growth or something like that.
China's economy is in a very strange situation. As the rest of the world experiences inflation when the government prints more money, China has deflation, which is really bad. That means as the government pumps more money into society, it does not trigger any demand for commodities, and prices continue to go down. That means its economy is in a serious problem.
And on that subject, what do you estimate is the unemployment rate now in China?
When we talk about unemployment rate, first of all, estimates, and then it's for urban populations only. So it excludes the rural population because it assumes everybody who belongs to the rural population must work to make a living. So I think it was this Monday, the government released the official unemployment rate for urban youth, which is what people are concerned about, right? It's 21.3%. I think half of a percent higher than May. But on the same day, there's a professor from Beijing University. Her last name is Zhang. And she released an article saying that it's understated. China's real unemployment rate for urban youth should be 46.5%. And that's more than twice as the government's rate. That article has been going viral in China.
And I understand that the way they calculate unemployment, as long as you work some minimal amount of time, you're still considered employed. Is that right?
Right. China's definition is 1 hour. Like if you work 1 hour a week, you are considered employed. And actually, I read on the internet, I don't know if it's true throughout China, but college graduates are required to find a job in order to get their diploma. You know, I think this is part of the government's mandate to reduce urban youth unemployment rate. So they require all schools to help the graduates to find a job. You know how they do it? Some schools require graduates to register an e-commerce account so that, you know, and have some kind of a transaction, you know, sell something online so that they will be considered self-employed when they graduate. And that's how they will get their graduate certificate or diploma. Yeah, I saw that on internet. I haven't got time to verify that, whether that's just one case with one school or that's a common practice throughout China. I don't know that yet, but that sounds very outrageous.
Yes. Now, segueing to Taiwan and China, why do you think Taiwanese are wealthier than Chinese people?
2022, Taiwan became the wealthiest country in Asia, overtaking Japan as the country that has the highest per capita GDP. And Taiwan also has the highest, I think it's per capita net worth or net wealth, which was at 138,000 euro, which is quite high. It ranks number 1 in Asia and ranks number 5 in, I think, all over the world. So that makes Taiwan the wealthiest country in Asia. Why do I think Taiwanese are wealthier? Well, first of all, you have a market economy. China doesn't have a market economy. And then the foundation for a market economy is freedom of speech and freedom of choice. I mean, part of the market economy is you can obtain information and make decisions on your own to decide what you want to buy, what you want to sell. But Chinese don't have that. And also, in terms of rule of law, Chinese don't have a way to settle disputes. If you have a market economy, you inevitably run into issues where people disagree with each other. How do you resolve that? So you need to have rule of law to manage disputes, but the Chinese don't have that. Last but not least, I think here, if you work hard and if you're talented, you can do pretty well. But that's not the case in China. I mean, China, you have to be politically aligned correctly. You have to have the right connections, right? So just because you're smart and you work hard does not mean that you can do well.
I think another aspect is the fact that people here can actually own the land.
Right.
Whereas in China, it's really just leased to the government, right?
Right, you only have the right to use it for a couple of decades, you know, and then the government can sell it again or collect some money from you after that term expires. It's another way for the government to collect money from its citizens, yeah.
Well, speaking of the government, why does the CCP want to invade Taiwan?
I think I want to look at it from two perspectives. One is Xi Jinping. I think politically he has the ambition to establish himself at the same level as Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping, right? So Mao Zedong was successful in driving the Kuomintang to Taiwan and out of the mainland, and then Deng Xiaoping, you know, was successful in getting Hong Kong and Macau back, you know. And so Xi Jinping, for him to establish himself at the same level, he needs to bring Taiwan back because that's the remaining territorial issue or political issue for the CCP. So that's just a personal political ambition for Xi Jinping. Now, in terms of the CCP, the party or the regime, it has always regarded the Taiwan issue as something that threatens its legitimacy. When the Qing dynasty ended in 1912, when the Empress Dowager, when she issued the abdication decree on behalf of the emperor, who was only, 6 years old, it basically acknowledged the will of the people. I read that document earlier today. It's very interesting. I recommend your viewers go read it. It basically said that based on people's heart, people want to have a republic. And she also mentioned in that document the prime minister at the time, Yuan Shikai, and she named him to be in power to manage the transition. The Qing dynasty ceded its power to ROC. The ROC was established on January 1st of that year. So it's like you have, in terms of the political lineage from Qing dynasty to the ROC, it was officially passed down from the last emperor of the Qing dynasty to ROC, right? And then when the CCP won the Civil War, it did not completely remove the ROC. It just drove them to Taiwan. So all these years, you have two governments that coexisted. And so CCP feels threatened that if they don't get rid of the ROC, its legitimacy is at risk. That's why Taiwan issue is very important.
So speaking of threatened, what are some signs in terms of China's military strategy towards Taiwan?
There has been different talks or opinions about CCP strategies, and different people have different views. I think in general, as much as the CCP wants to take over Taiwan, it's very careful not to start a military conflict with the United States, because the chances for it to win is not great. So we talked about, Deng Xiaoping from years ago, decades ago, came up with a strategy called blockade. It tries to isolate the Taiwan island, stop supplies from being sent to the island, resources, energy, exports, imports. So it tries to put pressure on Taiwan and gradually, through coercive measures or infiltration, and gradually take over Taiwan in that sort of a manner. But it tries very carefully not to start a military confrontation. I would say that would be CCP's strategy. Even during the Civil War in the 1940s, the CCP did not win because it's militarily stronger. It's just because it has successfully infiltrated Chiang Kai-shek's government. That's how it won. It's not because it has a better military strategy. So espionage, spy, infiltration, these tactics are what CCP does best. And they used it successfully for itself, and I think it's going to apply those tactics again.
And so probably it's just biding its time and then possibly hoping that someone else will make a mistake, like the U.S. or Taiwan will make some sort of mistake that gives them a chance, gives them the excuse to use force.
Yeah, I think it will gradually pressure on the island. The election is coming up. It obviously wants the Kuomintang to win because it feels like it has more control or influence over the Kuomintang. It will gradually to get you into a position that one day you will realize, I've already ceded my power to you. That sort of tactic, and this is what the CCP is very good at. But it's done very subtle and very gradual over time. And hopefully Taiwanese people can recognize that.
Now, a question everyone asks is, when's it going to happen? Now, it sounds like you're saying it's not that likely, but do you think there's a timeline for an actual invasion, that kind of thing?
Well, I think Xi Jinping, without a doubt, he wants to complete his Taiwan mission, right, during his term. The question is, how much time does he have? If he's sure that he could rule the mainland for the rest of his life, then he has probably more time. But if he feels like he only has 5 years left, of course he wants to complete that mission, before his term ends. A lot of people ask, is the war imminent, right? That's the question many people ask. If you look at the CCP's politics in the past couple of months, a lot of its decisions are very highly reactive. It's not proactive. The proactive plan is to take over Taiwan. That's just a big plan. But tactically, it's been doing a lot of reactive things. So I tend to believe that the decision to invade Taiwan, or if there's one, will be a reactive decision.
So what kind of impetus do you think would cause them to react that way?
Well, there will be no external, I think it will be reactive to its own internal political chaos and power struggles. Because the outside world, I don't think Taiwanese will declare independence, right? I mean, that's highly unlikely. I don't think the United States wants to start a war with China. So those external factors, in terms of starting a war is non-existent from my perspective. The only factor that matters here is CCP's own internal political struggle and political stability. Within the CCP's factions, Xi Jinping's political enemies, they want him to start a war and fail. Not everyone within the PLA is against war, although some are. And then these people could create all kinds of situations or incidents that force Xi Jinping to take certain actions against his will. So I think the political instability and the internal chaos is something that we need to monitor carefully. Just like the balloon incident, it came from nowhere, but it suddenly became a major event that disrupted Sino-US relations. So I think we don't know what's going to happen next. Somebody set up something that forces Xi Jinping to do something reactively, and that could, trigger a bigger crisis.
From your assessment right now, do you think the situation is more chaotic, stabilized, or in terms of the Xi and his inner circle?
I think it's very chaotic. I mean, just take a look at what has happened to the foreign minister. His absence, has become international headlines, right? And also the passing of the deputy commander of the rocket force, Wu Guohua. I mean, he has died. I mean, the official obituary said that he died from brain hemorrhage. But there's so much rumor is saying that he died from suicide. His sudden death, and also the fact that the commander of the rocket force is being investigated or has disappeared, and the former deputy commander has been investigated. So if you put all these things together, that means there's some kind of internal upheaval happening, if not within all of PLA, but at least within the rocket force. So all these rumors popping up is telling me Xi Jinping is going through some internal crisis right now. And also another thing that I just saw today was the PLA media, the Chinese military media, used to talk about its rocket force, the Navy, the Air Force, a lot. And recently, suddenly, it just stopped talking about the rocket force. And you wonder, well, there must be something going on, right? If you hear just a little bit information or rumors here and there, you think, okay, maybe that's just accidental. Maybe that's just rumor. But when you put all of this together, then you think, it cannot be all rumors or all accidental. Something must be happening. So this is what I can gather.
And why the rocket force? Do we have any idea why that particular?
The rocket force supposedly is the most special force because it was established in secret. It was a secret force established by Mao, actually during the Cultural Revolution. Colonel Yao Chen, I don't know if he is a former PLA Navy officer, and he has recently given a talk in the United States, and he said the reason the rocket force is in trouble right now is because they understand that if a war breaks out in the Taiwan Strait, they will be the first target of attack, by the United States. And according to him, he said the United States does not care so much about the PLA Navy or the PLA Air Force, but it does care about the rocket force because it has nuclear missiles and all of that. So that's why the officers in the rocket force is very concerned about their future or well-being because they know that they will be the target. And the anti-war sentiment within the rocket force is very strong.
And they're the ones that are the last vestiges of not fully loyalists to Xi.
This force traditionally has been believed to be an elite force that's run by princelings. So they feel special. It's a prestigious troop within the PLA. I mean, at least they see themselves that way. And all of a sudden, they're being put at the forefront of the war. And also Xi Jinping's recent anti-corruption baton has hit quite a number of princelings within the PLA. Fear of war and also, resentful of the sacking of certain princeling within the PLA. So that just, make these people a little bit not happy with the commander-in-chief is doing. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today at Taiwan News.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.